Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the RealNex webinar series. Today, we are focusing on our Mastermind program with Beau Beery. Beau is founder, president, chief executive, and chief of everything, it looks like, at Beau Beery Multifamily Advisors, doing the social media, doing marketing, doing the everything around it, but chiefly deal making. Beau is a top producer in the Northern Florida market for many years. He's been a longtime friend and proponent of RealNex as well as CRM in general, but a great power user of RealNex. He's built an incredible marketing system and engine and database to power his business, and really thrilled to have him on the show today and talking about that. But Beau is an author of top multifamily investors who dominate. Love to hear about that, though. I know, I'm sure the audience would be thrilled to hear. Maybe figure out how to get a copy of that and learn as a follow-up to this. As well, he's active on social media, YouTube channel, active in Facebook, LinkedIn, all over. Follow him when you can, and I am sure you'll gain value and benefit. So we're thrilled to have Beau on the call with us today, and very happy for all of you that are joining us either live here or on the video recording. We'll be sure to get a video out to everyone by Monday at the latest. So I know we always get that in the chat. Are you going to have a recording? Because there's so much to cover and it goes so quickly. We'll make sure everyone gets a copy of that. And of course, during the session today, if you have any questions, please chime in the question box, and we'll do our best to get to them towards the end of the program. So we'll go for, I don't know, both 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so, just you and me, and then we'll open it up and we'll take it from there. So you've built an incredible database. I know it starts with that. Love to hear how you've first built it, developed it, honed it, and refined it over time, because there's a lot of, I would call it commodity level information out there, but how do you really make it work for you and differentiate yourself, put your special sauce in the profiling of properties and the market?
Sure. Thanks for having me on first, Jeff. I appreciate it. All you guys who are attending, I know there's several hundred signed up, and most of them like to watch it when it's recorded later on. And so I just, for me, CRMs are the core of my business. I mean, it is literally, it doesn't just run my business life, it runs my personal life, like all my scheduling for working out and car shows and personal to-do things for my wife, and all these things run out of my CRM, and they're automated. It just makes life so much simpler. And I want to tell you, Jeff, this is the anniversary of my 20th year with RealNex.
That's incredible. Well, thank you very much. We do appreciate
2002 is when I was 2002. I had just graduated from the real estate program. I briefly went with the Coldwell Banker commercial in St. Augustine, and that whole office had just got on RealNex. And there was a guy there who's still in business, who's just a killer. His name's Brendan Kemp. And he was like the retail god of St. Augustine. Really looked up to him, made a ton of money even back then. And he was awesome at running the CRM, and everyone in the office had it. And so when I started off with the CRM, I would enter in names one at a time, and as I call people, I'd put in partial information. And when I get phone calls on listings I had, I'd put in some information. Some of them I'd go, I'd fill in completely and have great data. But I was never really super consistent for the first, several months. But I started learning from the guy next to me about how he scheduled the follow-ups and how on his game what he was. And I've learned that CRMs are only as good as the person who's using them, right? All CRMs are really good. Like, I love RealNex. There might be another one that's better for someone else, fairly, Jeff. But unless you're someone who's always constantly entering in information and updating things, the CRM's not going to be as good as it should be. So I guess it's been probably 15 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I decided that if I want to master my domain, which was going to be multifamily, that the minimum I had to do was start with every asset that I could ever sell in all the markets I cover, right? I've got to know what all those assets are. I can't just be randomly calling human beings by driving down the street or using CoStar or whatever it was, right? CoStar wasn't even around back then, but all the different ways that I didn't know all the assets, right? So you're just being an amoeba. And so I wanted to figure out, okay, how do I get every single asset physically imported into my CRM so I could look at it and see it and touch it, have pictures of it, how many acres it was, number of units, who owns it, what they paid for, all these things. And then once I had all that information in there, then I could run all kinds of analysis. I could make my phone calls, do my follow-ups and all that. So that's how I started. So what I did was, in Florida and most states, though some don't have this ability, but in Florida and most states, everyone has the ability to export every asset from the tax assessor website, right? So in the state of Florida, I can go in any county in Florida and I can say, hey, I want to know every apartment complex over 10 units, and I can export it to Excel, which is what I did many years ago. And usually a tax assessor will give you, who the owner name is, which is always an LLC, right? And they'll give you a number of acres. Some websites will give you the number of units, most won't. They'll give you a parcel number, the age, what it last sold for, what the price was, right? So basic columns from a tax assessor. Well, as brokers, I want to know way more than that. I want to know the first and last name of the actual human being who can make decisions about buying or selling this asset. I want to know their phone numbers, their email addresses. I want to know articles they've written, articles about them. I want to know who they're married to, where they went to school, who their kids are. I want to know how many units are there, how many bedrooms are there, what classification is it, A, B plus, B minus, all. So I kept filling in my Excel spreadsheets as much as possible, because my eventual goal was to import it into RealNex. And it would auto-populate, because I knew, having talked to some of your guys, that it could auto-populate everything all at one time rather than me entering in, 1,000 different parcels or 2,000 different parcels, right? That would take forever. But I knew I had to have Excel perfect first. That was my goal. So I had all the columns. So I would enter in data. I had an assistant enter in data. And then for contact information, I had a third-party person who that's all they did was find phone numbers, email addresses, articles, things like that, right? So once I had the spreadsheet prepared and looking perfect, and I was constantly updating it, because it took several months to do that, right? So now parcels are selling, new owners are coming in, so I'm having to watch the tax assessor on new sales that are happening so I can update my spreadsheet. So that one day, when I do the import, everything is perfect, right? For me, I went ahead and had someone from RealNex do the import for me, because I wanted to be it's super important to me that it does it perfectly. And software talks to Excel, but it has to be in a certain language. And so you guys were awesome. You import everything. Now everything's in my system. So here's the power of how I use it. And then you can ask me whatever questions or whatever. So now what I do is I've ranked. So I have every physical attribute about every apartment complex you could think of, down to the brick, okay? Classified, type of construction, I can go on and on. Everything about every asset, it's all in there. CoStar doesn't have every asset. Reese doesn't have every asset. Or of the assets they have, they're still missing information that's beneficial to us. And so I self-source. I'm a big believer in self-sourcing this information. It takes time and it takes money, but that's what you want, because your competition's not going to do the work, right? So once I imported in, I then found out, obviously I now have all the owners are. And then I started making phone calls, because I wanted to collect more information about these properties and who these owners are. Now I knew every broker was calling these folks and saying, hey, my name's so-and-so, you have a great property, the market's hot, do you want to sell, right? I talked to them more about, what are your needs? What do you like to buy? I would give them information about what rents are going for next door, about amenities I saw in other complexes that would work well for them. I never asked them about selling. I just wanted to befriend them, get to know them, gather information. Meanwhile, I'm updating RealNex with everything, right? As they're telling me what they like to buy, I'm creating new fields for their buy criteria, right? So I already have all the assets entered, and every single criteria has its own searchable field. So I have a field for the age of the property. I have a field for the ranking or classification. I have a field for when it last sold. I have a field for the parcel number, the number of units, the number of bedrooms, all these things. So that if I were working with a 1031 guy, and that 1031 guy said to me, Beau, I've only got 8 days left to identify. I want something over 100 units. I only want to buy in Volusia County. It can't have a flat roof. I don't want it older than 1990. It can't have already sold in the last 1 or 2 years because I probably can't add value. It can't have refinance. And I track all the loans in RealNex. It can't have refinanced in the last year. All this stuff, I can go in to my database of all 1,900 assets, and I can query down to the only 54 assets they could ever buy at this one time, right? And I can export those 54 from RealNex to Excel so I could look at them all at one time on a spreadsheet. And then I could further eliminate some of those if I wanted by looking at, okay, well, I've already talked to this guy. I've already talked to this guy 2 months ago. He said he's not going to sell. I can usually take 54 assets down to 19 assets, right? And then I can make 19 high quality phone calls rather than sending an email blast to 2,000 owners like every broker on the planet and say, hey, I got a guy who wants to buy an asset. He's got 8 days left in that 1031 exchange. It means nothing. But if I said, listen, there are 1,979 assets in northern half of Florida, and I ran a query, and you are one of only 19 properties that these guys could buy. I showed them your property. They want to buy your property. They know your property. It's a different feel, right? And most investors, because I've told them, they know the kind of data I have, right?
Well, that really differentiates you.
Yeah. And on the buy side, I was having all these conversations with these owners when I started this years ago, and I called every single owner of all those 2,000 assets, and I'm taking notes about what they like to buy. I'm taking more notes about the assets they own, maybe rents. I'm finding out new information about these assets. I'm entering that into searchable fields, right? I'm finding about what they like to do on the weekend, their hobbies, what their wife does, all these things that I can reference in later conversations. So as soon as I hang up, I'm now scheduling my next call in RealNex. So what happens, Jeff, is every day when I walk into my office, my to-do list that I look at on RealNex are things that I entered in last week, last month, 10 years ago. I could have had a conversation 10 years ago with a gentleman who owns an asset in Jacksonville that said, Beau, you don't even need to call me again until 2024 because we have a mandate on this asset in this fund not to sell till 2026 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so he's still going to be on my drip marketing program, but I've now entered in dates. I'm always entering dates. I'm entering in when loans are coming up. I'm putting that in RealNex. I'm entering in when they last sold it. I'm entering in things that they told me in a conversation about when they're going to be selling next or when they're thinking next, right? And what you're able to also do in RealNex is you can export, like I said, you can export anything to Excel and then run models, right? So I track all kinds of stuff like what's the average hold time of an asset overall? What's the average hold time of a beginning syndication, a mid-size syndication? What's the average hold time of student housing under 50 units? All of this stuff, because there's so many different columns to an Excel that were imported into a RealNex, the possibilities, the types of reports and data you can gather is endless, right?
That's brilliant.
That's why 4 days a week I post a market report on LinkedIn 4 days a week. So you think, how do you come up with a market report 4 days a week? How do you have time for that?
It's constantly up to date. Right.
It took me 9 seconds. I just export it. It's there. It's in my data. But listen, CRMs are only as good as if you're updating them every day. Okay, me and my staff are relentless entering in new owners, when units are added, when new deals come on, when a deal sells, I'm qualifying the sales and putting the sales prices, all kinds of stuff. It's a daily occurrence. We're constantly updating it. But when you become the data source, it's all worth it. I'll shut up for a little bit.
Well, that's fantastic. There's so much there to unpack. The first bit is, at least when you started, and even today, this doesn't happen overnight. But when you do the work, you have an asset that supports you for life. It becomes a machine that churns out business, because you're saying the deal, your next deal is in your to-do list for today because you did the work, whatever, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months ago, and it's teed up for you.
It's
I hate to tell you this.
thing. You could ask me,
Yeah.
Beau, what are you doing on January 6th of 2028? And I can tell you right now. I can go in my system and pull that up, and I will have to-dos that day.
Yeah, that's just, and the best agents that are using a CRM well are doing exactly this type of work, and so many people are intimidated because they look at it and they see this empty shell, and that's a challenge because you start with that, and how do you get to where you are? One of the things that RealNex just is introducing to the market, and I know you wish you had this 10 years ago when you did it, but we're now able to populate your full system with all of that base building information, all of that ownership information. We're even able to pierce the veil of the LLCs, to the highest degree that we can, to get to the true owner with true contact information, to have the comparable sales and the loan data built in. And if you're in the office or commercial side, we actually build stacking plans. We don't have lease expirations, some of that sizing information, but tenants at that address we also are able to feed. So brand new to RealNex, and if you're interested, we can share more about that. And I know, some people that did the heavy lifting that you did a few years ago or many years ago wish they had it today because it gives you that fast start to the market. But one of the things I know you've done well now, and this has enabled you to do, is you've built relationships with those buyers, so you're really never making cold calls anymore. And so, just talk to us about that. And I know you've categorized them. You've got your ABC system. So, love to hear about sort of profiling your buyers and sort of how do you not just have your controlled follow-up where someone says call me next Tuesday, but your systematic follow-up where you've just got to churn that database to make sure you're staying in touch well.
So the reason it's so important to have the denominator, what I call the denominator, is knowing what every asset is that you could ever transact in your system. You now have 100% capability to earn as much commissions as you can. Otherwise, you just don't know what's out there. I'm always shocked by how little the investors I work with know about how many assets actually exist, right? So now that I have it all in my system, I need to create a ranking system so I knew how best to spend my time. And I actually teach this in my book to investors to do the same thing with the brokers they work with, right? So it's my ABC system, and I get this from my coach, Blaine Strickland. I know Massimo Group also teaches this as well. But essentially, there's basically 996 owners of these 2,000 assets in my markets. And when I called all 996 of them, in addition to gathering information about them personally and their business and their wants and needs and their assets they own, I'm also listening for, are these guys a rank A customer? Are they a B or are they a C? Rank A customers are the ones that we meshed really well in that phone conversation. Like, they're probably going to save me in their phone. They like what I had to say. I like what they had to say. They seemed coachable. They seemed like someone who would transact with me. They owned the kind of assets that I would actually have a shot at transacting. And so I would rank them. And B people would be people who are also good. Maybe we just didn't hit it off like super, super good. And C people for me would be like a real estate investment trust. I know a REIT is not going to hire Beau Beery. They're going to hire a publicly traded brokerage to transact their $120 million asset. I know that. So they're a rank C asset. But all of them go on my drip marketing program and get something from me every month, sometimes several times a month. But the ranking these folks allows me to now create a call cadence using RealNex. So my rank A people, every one of my rank A people, which is about 10% of my database, I put in a stop call, like a stop in stocks, every 60 days, meaning I don't want 60 days to go by where I didn't talk to my rank A people. The reality is I'm talking to them every 2-3 weeks just because we transact together, we do a lot of business together, right? But I want that stop in there for every single A every 60 days. My Bs are every quarter, and my Cs are once a year, meaning where I'm actually going to call them or do something with them once a year, right? All of them are still seeing me every month. They're getting emails. They're going to, they may get a mailing from me. They're going to see me on social media. They're going to see a market report from me. So I'm not dead to C's or B's. They're just not getting calls from me and discussing and building that bond, right? But you can only do that with a CRM. There's no way on God's green earth you can track that many people in a competent manner by Excel or Outlook or some other BS old style, way of doing things or remembering things. Like I know guys in my former office, they just try to remember this stuff. It's nuts, right? But when you automate things, it's amazing. Every time I walk in my office, Jeff, I see things I have to do today for things I input in a long time ago. I don't even remember them.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets me giddy because it's like, oh shit,
mortgage
is coming up in 8 months.
That's
Woo!
money.
That's a hot call.
Right.
I never would have remembered that, right? It's not possible.
Or you remember it a week too late. And
right.
That's even more frustrating. Yep. That's the worst thing. You talked about, and some of your video and some of the other things, a little bit off, but it has to do with how you find the time to do all this stuff, is that you actually have a driver often when you're going on your tours, and you're freeing up time by in different ways. So maybe talk a little bit, some time management and some things that you do to optimize performance.
I mean, my top 3 or 4 tips always for all brokers are CRM, get a coach, hire an assistant, and become super efficient at those things, right? And so my assistant is all day, every day, keeping my CRM on point, right? I'm entering in stuff all the time, but she's in it all the time, keeping things updated so that my data is awesome, right? Other ways, yes, the ways that I save time is I always hire a driver, right? So everywhere I go, if it's more than like a half an hour, 45 minutes away, I have several drivers that are on tap that come to my house. They drive my vehicle. I've got a whole back seat system set up where I can pop on RealNex and make phone calls and emails and keep on. Because my whole goal is Monday through Friday, I'm done at 6 o'clock, right? And I want my weekends to be all to myself so I can mess around with my cars and do sports and do my fun things, right? And the only way to do that is to become as efficient as you possibly can. I farm out other stuff. I farm out people who find contact information for me. I have other stuff. I have other people who give me, sort of tips on social media stuff. My wife works in my business. She handles a lot of my YouTube stuff, my video updating, the finance part of things, bill paying, all that stuff. So, I'm a single man show. I like it that way. I want it that way. It's only me. I have no other brokers. I have one salaried person. That's it. And then everyone else is farmed out to help me. I use Despard Analytics to do not to do all of my underwriting and BOVs. But when I get busy, sometimes I'll get busy. Sometimes I'll get potentially 3 or 4 listings in 1 week. I can't handle that. There's no way I can underwrite 3 or 4 assets in a week in the manner in which I want to. So sometimes I'll use a Despard Analytics, and I'll give them a couple projects, and they'll do all the analyzing and the valuation for me and some of the comps. That way I can get these back to the sellers in time so I have a better chance of getting the listing. Anything you can do to save time, this is a business in where the more time you can save, the more money you're gonna make. Because whatever time you're saving, whatever you're paying someone else to do something, is almost always at a lesser rate than you make, okay? Most of us are making several $100 an hour, right, in this business. And how many vendors out there to do all the things to do in our business make more than that? So it always makes more sense to hire.
And with the assistant, that's always come up as a question. How did you source, and how do you manage? How do you interact? Because I think you basically you're virtual, right? You're not working in an office with everybody, right, all those resources sitting around you. So how do you communicate efficiently? How do you get them to know what to update? How do they build your database? How are you communicating and making sure that everything is done timely?
Yeah, I mean, we try to have a lunch, once a month. Sometimes we don't always get them in, but we just pick up the phone a lot. We've been together, I don't know, 12 or 13 years now. So, usually after 2 or 3 years, that person who's assisting you almost becomes your right arm. They think like you, they see like you, they hear like you, they know how you like things, right? And so she's completely, I mean, this, you know, my associate could be the CEO of a major company. I mean, she is just that good at stuff. And I think the longer you're together, the more proficient you both become together, the better she is or he is at assisting you in making money. But it's just communication, man. I mean, it's just simply picking up the phone. I mean, most of our 95% of our conversations are done in like 5 seconds. I mean, it's literally just, hey, boom, did you do this right here? Yeah, cool. What about it? Done. Like, because we interact so often, we just know each other so well that that's all we need.
Perfect. Got a lot of questions coming in, so before
Cool.
we
Let's
get
do
too deep, let's see what we've got. So, and I think we probably addressed this, but one came in early at the systems you have with regard to timelines and follow-up for your clients. I think you covered that with your ABC, but I don't know if there's anything. Are you using the RealNex timeline feature, or how are you just plugging in one at a time the follow-ups?
Yeah, so like when I'm actually making a phone call to a rank A person, their profile is up on my computer. As I'm talking to them, I always highly encourage you to have earbuds or something so that you can be typing, right? So I'm typing into the notes section of RealNex important things about them. So like, because the notes section is at the very bottom of every contact card. And so when I'm talking to someone, I want to be able to read things that I've put down in previous conversations. He's married to Sally or Bob. They have 2 kids. He's big into cars. He does this on weekends. He owns 7 other assets in this market. He told me one time that he was going to be selling in 2020. So all the most important notes of all conversations go in my notes section at the bottom so that I don't have to go digging into the history section of RealNex. But I'll also, in the history section of a phone call, type in what we said just so I have a log, right? But the most important things go in the notes section so that I'm always looking at them. And then as soon as I hang up, I'm scheduling that next call. Not with the person, right? Because nobody likes to be on the phone with the broker and the broker is trying to smash down the next phone call date. Hey, let's go ahead and get a date in the calendar while we're on the phone. I don't like that. That doesn't feel right to me, and so I don't want to do it to them. I'm just scheduling it in my RealNex to call them in 60 days.
That's your reminder.
Or to do something, right?
And it's not an appointment. It could be an appointment, but in that case, it's just your next follow-up just to get them in a routine, in a cycle.
Yeah, and I want to be able to have the freedom of not calling them at that time. Maybe I'm busy. Maybe I'm doing something.
Right.
But I want that stop in my calendar, because once I walk in and I pull up I think it is called calendar. It's either called calendar. No,
we have the auto dialer that gives you that the follow-up, and it's for your notes and your follow-up. So it will dial the phone, hit the your update, and then set your next call.
List, there's calendar that shows little calendar dates, but then there's
then events. Yeah, it comes up under events. Yeah.
When I pull that up, it shows me everything I'm doing today.
You're not using it, but for some of those on the call, one of the best practices we found when you want to put out a programmatic type of routine for a listing or a solicitation process, not just a routine follow-up, is the timeline feature, which allows you to string together any number of different events and put them into a program, either for a project or a contact, to make sure your team can be assigned to different things that you want to do. One of the questions here is about auto dialer. Are you using an auto dialer and just doing it, smiling and dialing?
Yeah, I don't. There's some. I was introduced to a couple of them that are really, really cool. But you have to understand, I'm a big proponent for getting deep and into a niche, right? My niche is 900 people that own all my assets, and only 144 of those are my rank A. So all day long, all I do is call 144 people, and I only call 3 or 4 a day over a 60-day period. That's it. I ain't trying to make
100 calls a day. Yeah.
No, I just don't believe in that, right? I'll let that to the juniors at the national companies who make 60 calls a day and build no relationships whatsoever. I'm trying to build relationships with 144 people that I'm so close to them and they love me so much and we've done so much business together that I'm like their barber. They ain't never switching for me. I've been cutting their hair for 20 years. We've had conversations about family and dogs and pets and hobbies, and we've done
Your friends.
18 transactions together. Ain't nobody taking this person from me, right? So
That's
I
what you want.
just make those, so I don't use auto dialers because it doesn't work for me, right? I'm just making 3 or 4 calls a day for actual business.
Just maybe go back to the top that you talked about your 999 or whatever the exact number is of properties and the lesser owners. The definition of your market to make it big enough but not too big. How did you find that balance? To know that this is what I can get my arms around and I can make enough money doing it. Because you're in a tertiary market or secondary market. And, some people say, I got to be a jack of all trades if I live in Gainesville. But you've learned to specialize and just go wide. But how wide is, without getting spread too thin?
The way we figured out, since I just do multifamily and I'm based in Gainesville, there's only about 10 or 11 transactions a year done in the entire Gainesville market. Well, I mean, even if I captured all 10 or 12 of those, I wouldn't probably be happy with the gross commission income, right? And so you have to determine, you have to cover a wide enough geography that based on the number of data points, meaning sales that occur, and the market share you believe you can capture equals a GCI you want to earn, right? And so when we surveyed our market with my coach many years ago, we said, okay, well, how many transactions a year on the trailing 5 years have done in Jacksonville? How many are done in Daytona, DeLand, Ocala, Tallahassee? So I cover the northern half of Florida, not just because they're within a couple of hours of me, though that is nice, but because it equals a number of transactions, roughly 150 or 160 a year for the entire northern half of Florida, that based on the market share I believe I can capture equals the amount of money I want to make, right? Now, listen, if you're in a tertiary market and you're an hour and a half away from major markets, I'm not saying concentrate on just one asset and do nothing else, but you need to be known for something. If you're in a tertiary market and you have to be a generalist in order to survive, and you're not willing to travel an hour, hour and a half out of the market, first of all, you should, but if you're not willing to, at least become known for an asset. Do all the assets, but be the retail guy, right? Be the office girl, whatever it is, so that you can master that one thing and everyone at least knows to call you for that.
Little bit of an aside, but it's so important on that point. You've built a brand and you've done masterfully. You've built your brand. You've written the book. You've done the blogs. You're doing things like this. You're constantly in social media. It's work. And how has it paid off for you? And how have you thought about it? How have you built that into your day? Because and how much time does it take?
Yeah. Well, you have help, right? So I can't be doing all of those things, right? I get them automated by people who can help me for a lot of the stuff. I mean, to me, branding and reputation is like, it's one of the most powerful things you can build. I feel like I'm a marketing guy who has learned real estate, not a real estate guy who has learned marketing, right? And so, building it for me, building a brand, having a social presence, writing the book, the YouTube channel, all the things, all I'm trying to do, my goal every time is when a new customer enters my market. Let's say a guy in California owns 5,000 units in California. He's sick of California and the politics. He wants to start acquiring apartment complexes in Florida, buys a complex in Florida. It comes up on the tax assessor website. I capture it. My assistant puts it in my CRM. She puts in a call for me so that it shows up in my calendar. I go to call him. When I go to call him, my goal always is, hey, my name's Beau Beery. I'm in the Florida market. I see you just bought X, Y. Oh, and he just interrupts me. Oh, yeah. I know you, Beau. I know you. I see you here on LinkedIn. I see you on Facebook. I subscribe to you on your YouTube channel. I bought your book. Oh, yeah. We just bought this. We've been meaning to call you. That's the goal, right? How easy is it to gain business when you're already known, right? When you've got a reputation that precedes you. That's what we're all after, right? The easier we can sale, the better.
It's more than that, and you can talk, I think, at length about this. Is that you're often not selling, you're adding value. So each call is not the pitch, right? Each call is, hey, did you know that there was a comp that just sold down the street and you just wanted to make you aware of it, or that the vacancies are going up in the market, or your property looks like, I drove by it last week, maybe it was looked a little bit cluttered or something. So it's,
Right.
again, not, it's like, can I list your property?
See,
How do you,
yeah, Jeff, here's the thing. So 79% of every sale that I've done the trailing 5 years is done with the same customers, right? And so it's 79%, right? It's just reoccurring stuff. And so I just lost my train of thought, Jeff. Oh my God.
That's
What
all
was,
right. You're going about giving value, and
yes.
orders are coming to you rather than you're pitching for the business.
No, thank you for reminding me. So every
Yeah,
one of my phone calls, all I'm trying to do is just appear to give them actual great value, not, not, hey, the average sale price in Jacksonville is $137,000 a unit, right? I'm trying to, all they want to do is they want to raise the value of their assets and they want to buy new assets. That's all any investor wants to do. Tell me how I can make my existing shit more valuable and how can I buy more? They know that I make my living selling real estate. I don't have to ask, hey, do you want to list your property with me? They know that's how I make my living. I want to do, my goal is to add as much value as I can every single time so that when they see me call, they see my name come up on the phone, they
that's
answer it.
value. Right.
They don't go, oh God, Beau's getting ready to ask me to list again, right?
Right.
Because when it comes time, when it is time, when the mortgage comes up or the fund is now matured, whatever it is, I'm all they think of because I'm just added value for the last 6 years.
That's perfect.
It's the long game approach, right?
Yep. Yep. And yeah, you can't be too hungry. The client will smell that too fast and will
They
be
do.
turned
They're
off.
not
Yeah.
stupid. I mean, when
Yeah.
you try to say, yeah, so I noticed this and this about your property, and this is going on next door, you might want to consider selling. They're not stupid. They know what you're doing, right? These are
Right.
people who have multi-million-dollar assets. I mean, to think that they're not falling, that they're going to fall for whatever it is that you're trying to just add value, man. That's all it is.
We have so many questions. I'm going to get back to them. The searchable fields. So the question about searchable fields. Inside of RealNex, we have the filtering capability. So every single field in the database is searchable. So we both talked about there are programmed fields in the system, and then we have user-defined fields in the system. So you can customize fields to be your own, name, your own label. You can color code them to make sure that they become your priority ones to pop up. But then you can query against any of them. You can save that query. You can make that your favorite. And it makes it really easy just to pop down and say, here's a query that I built before. You don't need to rebuild it. You can maybe tweak the size range or the geography or some things in the system, but you'll get to exactly what you want to get to. And as Beau talked about, you might want to filter and then filter it again and filter it again, because you start talking about, I know you talk about this, a student housing story where you drill down from micro or macro to micro to get to the 10 that would be the perfect target.
Well, it's fun to see it. It's fun to see what is seemingly an overwhelming job and making it much smaller, right? So we all get, everyone on this phone call right now gets calls from investors that says, hey, I know you're multifamily. Let me tell you what we're looking for. Here's our criteria. And they'll give me the criteria. One of the first things I do is I tell them how many of those sales have happened, not only in the market they're calling about, but in the entire northern half of Florida, right? So someone will call me in. The typical call is, hey, we're looking for 150 plus units, conventional, value add, value add. We want to be in Jacksonville and Gainesville and Tallahassee, can't be older than 1980, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, okay, great. Go into my CRM, boom, boom, boom. And when I tell them that only 24 sales have occurred in the last 2 years or 3 years that meet their criteria, they're all blown away. First of all, they're blown away by the stat, but they're also blown away by, like, how do you know that? No broker has ever told me that stuff, right? Right? And what happens is, and every investor, when we're on LinkedIn and Facebook, we're all connected to other investors and other brokers. And so we see nothing but closings all over the place. Every time we go on LinkedIn, we see closing here. Here's a picture of me at the closing table. Here's me doing due diligence in the property. So the mind thinks that there's thousands of transactions going on. And so when investors call me, the beauty of having a CRM and tracking all this stuff on a regular basis is I'm able to give them factual data that blows their mind and changes their whole sort of aura on how they do their business, right? How many of us on this phone call get people who only want to buy in a specific market? I get this all the time. Like, hey, we love the Jacksonville market. Great. 6 closings have happened in the last year of the criteria you just told me about. No way, that's impossible. No, I see closings all over the place. There's buildings going up left and right. Great, I'm just telling you, that's how many have closed. By the way, it's public on my website. I track every closing, right? And they go on there and they see it. But they don't know this stuff, right? Because most brokers don't track it. They rely on a CoStar report or their national brokerage to do some report on it. But usually, in a lot of these guys, they can't get as granular.
Yeah, you need the details
about their own markets.
And then, like in that, one of the questions about the searchable fields, and I think it's important in the searchable fields to not be free form. And RealNex has built in a capability to use codes and tables that we pre-populate for you with what we think are optimal, but you can refine them to make them your own. So if you talk about things like Class A, Class B, Class C, downtown suburban, great. And then you'd have, DT would be downtown. So all you need to do is type in a couple letters, so you're not having to type things out and spell them wrong and then not be able to query against it. But using coded tables and some of those, even the user defined fields, you can set up to be tables and build the table for that, so that you can make sure that you don't miss things by any typo or error in that.
Yep. You will be amazed, guys, what a CRM can do for your data analysis, for the market reports you put out, because the more you can be out there, the more you can be seen actually giving quality data, it reflects upon you. People start seeing you as an expert. I did, I could even do a report on, I did a poll on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. I do polls every week. One of my polls was, of these 4 first names, which first name owns the most number of apartment assets in the northern half of Florida? It was like Chris and Michael and whatever it was, right? How can, it's first of all, it's random, goofy information, but it's kind of fun information. People found it to be very, very fun, right? And it happened to be, I think Michael owned 96 assets, right? But it's all from RealNex. I'm literally able to export, sort, boom, 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 calculate it, done, right? I mean, the number of things you can put out is endless once you get all this data in there.
And then you can drill down by submarket, market, county, and all the other geographies. So you just need to keep honing the information. And a question coming in about importing. So if you go into the top right of your screen under your system, you can open up the import tables for each type of section of RealNex, whether it's the property section or comps or contacts, whatever. Each one will give you a spreadsheet template of how to set up your labels and your header fields in your Excel spreadsheet to easily import. But as Beau said, RealNex also has an import or data team that can help you import. And what that helps to do is it actually relates the data to one another. So if you have a property database and a contact database, they're not just sitting side by side, but it's making it all come together as one, and making sure that owners are attached to properties, properties are attached to owners, tenants are attached to buildings, and so forth. So working with the team might be helpful. You have a simple spreadsheet, great. If you've got certain information that you get regularly, we can set up a routine, a monthly service to just make sure we're getting that updated for you, or we can provide the data for you, as mentioned, to make that happen. So
I would opt for paying you guys all day long. I mean, that's just the easiest, fastest, cleanest way to get that stuff done.
So, well, we do a lot of work, and we figured out some methodologies to pierce the veil of the LLC to get to true ownership. How have you done it? That's I think something that the audience would be interested in trying to figure out.
So for me, I gave a directive to my people on the type of person I wanted, right? So depending on the type or size of asset, if it was owned by a national or a REIT or some huge syndication that I knew had acquisition teams and disposition teams and all this stuff, number one, that's probably not my customer, right? Because if I can't speak with the actual principal, they're probably not the one who's going to hire little old me, right? And so for those folks, I wanted, kind of the primary acquisition person because that's the kind of person that I can get in with, and when I can do them right, they'll sort of escalate me throughout the company, right? If it was a partnership, I wanted to know who the principals were, right? So we'd go through SunBiz, is the Florida Department of Corporations, and we'd look those up. If it were nationals, we would go directly to the websites, and I had certain titles that I wanted my people to go after, and that's who they would go after, and they would grab those people's contact information. I always wanted a picture of them, right? Because when I'm making these phone calls, I want to know visually in front of me who this person is, right? Is he or she big, tall, skinny, fat, fat? What's the race? Where are they from? Where did they go to school? All these things kind of paint a picture and the age, the type of person I'm talking to, right? And it allows me to be more relatable and to build a better relationship with them. And I always like to know who our connections were, through LinkedIn. Who did we know together? I wanted to know what the background pictures were on their Facebook. That's usually their hobby or the thing they love the most. I wanted to know what all their other pictures were. We would Google articles they've written, right? So I could reference those in phone calls. Maybe articles about them, things they've bought or sold. I've even looked it up, public criminal records. I want to have a full grasp of who the human is. So when I call them, I don't dump all that information on them. On a first phone call, you would look like a freak, right? But over time, over months and years, you can dip things in there. Oftentimes, one of the calls I would do would be, hey, my name's Beau Beery. See that you bought so and so. Are you interested in buying anything else? Hey, by the way, when I was looking up your contact information, my assistant found you on LinkedIn. You and I know Jeff Finn together. Man, let me tell you before you answer my question. Right? And so it's just nice little icebreakers to have information about them in front of you.
That's really helpful and great information. Another little tool that we have in RealNex is called web links. And you can actually just click a web link from that person and get their LinkedIn profile, get their Facebook. You can go to the tax assessor, some different links that you can build that'll take the name or the property, the property identifier or property address and go and grab the information. So check that out as well if you haven't to do some of it. It helps to speed up some of the work that Beau's been talking about. You mentioned a company for your financial analysis work, and one of the viewers is asking about the name of that again. If you could just get that articulated well.
And you guys have analysis tools and so forth, but that still requires your own time. And so having a third party do all that is always resourceful. But the company is called Despard, DESPARD, Despard Analytics. It might be despardanalytics.com, I'm not sure, but Val, V-A-L, Val Despard is the principal. It's a guy. And basically, he's formed a company that is made up of a bunch of sort of younger acquisition type analyst types that have worked in various capacities for investment companies. And some of them still work for those companies and do side work. Some of them work full time for Val, but a bunch of very smart, intellectual, analytic guys that can build spreadsheets for you on however you want them. They can do their own models. They can do rent comps, sales comps. I think they've even gotten into doing, flyers and prospectus and things like that. I just use them for the analytical part when I get in a crunch.
That's great value if you're looking for an outsource. But as many of you know, if you're using full RealNex Navigator, you have those functionalities in Market Edge to do your BOV. You can straight from CRM hit a button. It'll take your unit mix if you're multifamily, or rent roll if you're commercial. Put that into the spreadsheet. You can add your assumptions and forecasts, and we'll do the heavy lifting of the calculations for you and put everything into a professional presentation. So if you need a third party, great. But if you're able and have your team ready, RealNex can help you there as well. So Beau, you're making the 4 calls that are teed up for you based on relationships, and you're mining based on all the work that you did in 2002, 2003, 2010. If somebody's just in their first few years, 5 years, what should do you have any recommendation what their day should look like? How you build it to get to the point that you're at today?
Yeah, I think doing exactly what I did in the very beginning, which was creating the denominator, getting every asset you could ever do, find out who the owners are, get their contact information, and you would make phone calls that are adding value to them, not asking for listings. And my normal pitch was always, what do you like to buy, right? Like, for instance, if you're someone who wants to get into selling, multi-tenant office buildings in Seattle, and that's your niche, right? People who own multi-tenant office buildings want to own more office buildings, right? And so as a young person, I always called them up, and people who own these buildings, as soon as a broker calls them, you can almost feel on the phone they're already about to hang up, right? They've gotten a million calls. They know you're about to ask them to sell. They know that you're about to ask them or tell them how valuable the property is and how much it would get in the market. But when you flip the script and you're kind of like, hey, I see that you own XYZ apartments. You interested in buying more there in Jacksonville? You interested in buying more there in Tallahassee? Like, it's almost like, well, yeah, sure. Like, what you got, right? And then I would just ask some questions. Well, tell me, like, what's your minimum size? What do you go after? Do you like market rate? Do you like student? Do you have any age restrictions? So I had a whole list of questions on the asset that I was representing or niching on. I have a whole bunch of questions that I could fall back on, but as soon as you ask about them and what they want, they just start talking, right? And understand that before any of these calls that I made, they weren't from a dial, or they weren't from one of these auto dialers. I wasn't trying to get 60 done a day. I did tons of work up front researching every human being before calling them. I literally found out everything I just told you, the articles they wrote, what they look like, what their background pictures were, articles they wrote, who were connected to on LinkedIn. I wanted all that information first in front of me in the notes section with their picture in front of me, all about them looking at me. So when I made that phone call, it was already a warm call to me.
You knew you're talking to.
Yeah. And if there was ever any kind of a stall in there, I could be like, hey, by the way, when I was researching you, I saw that your background picture on Facebook was of a Porsche. I'm huge into, and so every one of my phone calls were 10, 15, 20 minutes long, right? And I'm still taking notes, I'm getting all this stuff. And when I ended every call, I would say, hey, by the way, I have this. Is this your cell phone? Is this the way I should call you? Do you have a work number? By the way, let me get your email address. I want to send you the criteria you just told me. I want to make sure I have it right, so I'll send it to you. So I get his email address, right? And then I'll verify some other information. By the way, I see that you own XYZ apartments, but I wasn't sure. I did my research before I called you, Jeff, right? And so I see that there's another property over here in Tallahassee. I wasn't sure if you owned it or if you had partnered with someone. What's the deal there, right? So I'm always like mining my data on every call, so I had the most perfect system all the time.
That's fantastic. And one of the next question coming in is about groups. Are you grouping your people? Is it just A, B, and C? Is it simple as that, or do you use the group function in CRM to?
Oh yeah,
any other way categorize?
I use groups all the time. So what I use groups for, sometimes like when I have a new listing, I'll create. You have to understand, I have all the owners of all the existing assets, but then every human being for the last 20 years that's ever wanted to buy an apartment complex, I've also entered them into my system, right? So when I get a listing, instead of there being 10,000 people that I email blasted to, you look like a goofball because you're sending a 12-unit complex to a guy who's never bought anything less than 200 units in his entire life, and now he's deleting you from your system. I query down 10,000 people to the only 1,200 that would ever buy this new listing I got, right? And so, that's sort of the reverse way that I also use this as well, is on the buy side. All right, so now I'm just sending it to the exact people, and I can personalize. RealNex can allow you through you also have this mass email ability, right? That sends it to, hey Jeff, thought of you for this. Boom,
very,
boom, boom.
very personalized. Yeah, you can put any field, you can merge any field from the database into the, like, hey, I saw that your loan might be coming due in 2024. Now might be a good time to think about refining or
whatever it is, or like there could be something that's new with buildings, and so I can go into my database. There could be something that is now needs to happen with all 1970s buildings. I don't know. I'm making up stuff.
Right. Yep.
Query the 1970s buildings, and then send an email to them. Hey Jeff, hey Bob, hey Sam. and it sends them all out at one time, boom, 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 right? And they think that you were thinking of them directly, like a mail merge.
Yeah, the question on these images and this profiling stuff, you're just dropping that into notes, because I know a question about getting that in. There is an attachment tab where you can put any type of file attachment. We have images where you can put any type of image, but are you putting them into the actual, cut and pasting them into the note, or are you using the images and the attachments?
Picture, I'm clicking on the plus sign on their picture section. I'm
Right.
uploading a picture. On the assets, I upload pictures of the assets. I get them from apartments.com or Google Earth or whatever. I'll import that. And then if there's articles that they've written, you could upload those as attachments to their actual person card, right? Or any other. You know, sometimes when people give me their criteria, some investors will put their criteria in a PDF. I'll upload it, and then I'll put it in my notes section. Hey, see the attachments for their buy criteria, right? So I utilize all that stuff.
Perfect. There's a lot of questions coming in.
I was going to say, you can imagine, guys, on everyone who's on the phone, over the course of 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years, the kind of information you can gather on any one person's profile, like it's, you know, people would pay you huge money. Okay, a brokerage would pay you huge money if you turned over your CRM after a 20-year period and you were building it to that level.
It's a huge asset. There's no doubt about it. Or, you know, so not to someone to, you know, you could sell it, but also you could build your team and have somebody, if you're a partnership or others, you know, it becomes part of what you're distributing, or to your, if you're next generation or whatever, it is a value as you look to transition. Just about out of time, but there's a lot of questions about the data and the data services. Call your RealNex client rep, or just email sales@realnex.com, and we can get you more information about that. There is a small additional cost for the service, and it just depends on what the geography is and the scope of the product types that you're interested in. We'll get that covered for you. Just reach out to either your regional rep or sales@realnex.com. Let's see. Oh man, they keep coming, Beau. Man, you stirred up a lot of interest and activity. But
hey, let me throw this out.
I think we may be out, and we'll just have to pick up with everyone one-on-one. So go. You have some closing comments, things you want to share?
Since you have so many other questions we can't get to, and we've only got a couple minutes left. I'm just going to drop a little teaser thing. I'm in the very early stages with my coaching company of creating a monthly mastermind for brokers. And so just everyone who's on the call, be on the lookout, reach out to me. I'll put you on the mailing list when it's primed, but it'll basically be a monthly opportunity to kind of hop on the call with me, and we get down and MF dirty on stuff, right? Like I tell you, I open the book, right? I don't care. I don't care if you're my competition or not. I'll tell you what I do. I just want to see you successful. And so that program will be launching. It's going to be several months toward the later part of the year, but we can take this call to the next level. And yes, it is a paid membership, but it'll be well worth your time.
That's perfect. Great and good for you. I'm glad you're doing that. Glad you're giving back, not just to your clients, but to your community in the industry. Yeah. So well done. I think we sold a few books. It looked like from the comments that are coming in. So cool. You made a nickel or two, which is not all bad for an hour's work. Thanks so much, Beau. We really appreciate it. I know it was valuable for me. I hope it was as valuable to the audience. I'm sure it was. Stay tuned. Next week we have Dr. Jeffrey Fisher, who literally wrote the book on real estate finance. He was professor emeritus at head of the real estate department at Indiana University, and one of our partners at RealNex. He'll be working with Market Edge and teaching you how to underwrite and do your investment analysis within the Market Edge tool. And next month we'll have Stephanie May, another CCIM and RealNex client from Maven Commercial up in Barrie, Ontario, talking about how she's built her company and her team using RealNex as her operating system for her company. So many more webinars to come, many great future masterminds to come. Can't wait for the next ones, and for everyone to come back and join us again. Again, if you have some friends to share this with, please do. We'll get the link out to you early next week. And Beau, thank you so much for taking the time and your long-time support of RealNex.
You bet.
All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
See ya.